Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Phil for the final spoiler discussion for Andor Season 2. We're going to be talking episodes 10 through to 12, the final arc in the final season of what many are calling the greatest Star Wars series to date, others calling it the greatest piece of Star Wars ever written. I don't think there'll be discussion on that tonight, but I'm sure we'll probably get into that conversation. But before we really kickstart this off, Phil, how are we doing this evening?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Excited to crack into these last few episodes.
Yes, we are, and it is going to be a different one. We've had a whole variety of guests on this season. We've tried to pull it the way we did for Mandalorian Season 2, which is really throwing the years back, where we had 8 episodes, and each week we brought on a different podcast channel or reviewers, and that was a lot of fun. That was the intention for Andor Season 2. And, well, fortunately, we got 4 episodes. We got the whole season across the month. Unfortunately, that meant 4 deep discussion. So I'm going to open with a thank you, not just to you, Phil, for jumping on tonight, but for all of our guests that have been on with us. We've had Aaron, we've had Clarice, we've had Charlie, Eamon. It's been lovely talking Andor with everybody involved, new faces to the channel, familiar faces to the channel. And I think this is a show that every single person watching has had a different experience with, whether you have a background of Star Wars, whether you don't, whether your background is film stuff, TV stuff, or maybe you are a big Star Wars fan. It's been really fascinating listening to other people and what the show has meant for them or what the show has done for them. So this is going to be a really different discussion to some of the other weeks, because episodes 10 to 12, whilst being the final episodes of the show, they are the episodes that essentially finish as Rogue One begins. There are prequels and there are prequels. There is episode 3.99, which people call Rogue One. In that case, this is episode 3.98. We are that close. So we are going to be talking some more Rogue One this weekend. We're going to be live on Sunday with a big Rogue One discussion. We'll have rewatched it by then. We'll be talking about the impact of Andor, recontextualizing it as they've spoke about in marketing. So there's a lot more Star Wars stuff to come. We've got a lot of weekly shows happening, but as we are live, as people are watching at home, this is a spoiler discussion, so please do comment below with your thoughts on Andor. Your thoughts, if you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it, your thoughts wrapping it up. We do want to hear from you. If you do like it, please consider hitting the subscribe button. We will have more Star Wars stuff. It's more a matter of when can we do Star Wars stuff compared to what can we do with Star Wars stuff. We are a film channel ultimately, and we've been very heavy on TV in the last few weeks. We've got our Last of Us discussions running weekly as well, so please do get involved. If you want to find out our videos, find out what we're up to, linktree.com/cinemasavvy puts you through to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. But Phil, heading back to you, because I've just done a massive monologue. Last week, the Gorman Massacre, Mon Mothma escapes Coruscant. I want your thoughts on the third arc of season 2.
I mean, you know exactly what I sent you in our chat. I mean, it is one of the greatest pieces of television I have ever seen. That 3-episode arc. I mean, stormtroopers actually being terrifying, proper character development between Cyril and Dedra. I love the little fake out that everyone was freaking over. The initial trailer, they thought, "Oh, Vader's going to be in it. He's choking Dedra." No, she's having a panic attack because it hits the fan. It hits the fan in a big way. Those 3 episodes were just mega, and it's something that Star Wars hasn't really tackled before. We know this stuff happens in the galaxy. I mean, if you look at Clone Wars, you can see a few war crimes committed, but not in the same depth, not in the same kind of angle. I mean, if you look at Star Wars' breadth, you go from the Young Jedi Adventures, which is aimed at 5-6-year-olds, getting them into the galaxy far, far away, to this. It is a big stretch, but those last few episodes were incredible. So I joined you for the very first 3 episodes when we had those go out, and I've been watching obviously as been going through. And this is one of those shows I haven't done it in a while, of making sure I'm staying awake, sitting there 2 a.m. It's one of the first shows in a long time where I sat and go, no, I need to watch this at this time. I cannot have anything spoiled. I must experience this as it's going, because compared to some of the other things, it's the first show I've seen in a long time from Star Wars that every single person I've spoken to has the same opinion of how highly they laud it, how much they loved it. All discussions haven't been around, well, this was bad, this was good. It's been more, how good was it? How much did you enjoy this bit? Are the people's takes from it has been fantastic. So I'm interested to see yours going forward into these three. But yeah, those last few have been absolutely incredible, and obviously leads into tonight's discussion very neatly.
It absolutely doesn't. In the same kind of boat here, that I didn't stay awake for the finale 3 this week. So the context of my story is I had yesterday off work, UK time that is, folks. So it drops 2 a.m. here in the UK. And I had the day booked off literally because when they announced this show, I was like, I'm going to have the finale off. It's going to be huge. We're going to stream on the Wednesday night. As on the channel, Mission Impossible reviews out now. I'm allowed to say that. We got to go to the Mission Impossible press screening. So I made the choice to be there last night. It was basically going to be Mission Impossible yesterday or tonight, Andor yesterday or tonight. I wanted to see Mission Impossible. So I didn't go to watch it too. I wanted to watch it 2 a.m., but I said to you before we hit live, I was like, it got to 11:30 and my eyes started going. And I was like, I don't know, that's just me really connecting to adulthood now. 10 years ago, I was watching Game of Thrones every Monday at 2 a.m. on dodgy sites because Sky had adverts. I needed to watch it live to avoid spoilers. And Andor, because I was off work, I turned my phone off. I went to sleep. I woke up. I watched all 3 episodes immediately. If I'm honest, I woke up at 6 a.m. I was like, no, I'm going to go back to bed because this is going to wake the family up. But this was quite something to behold at 8 in the morning. And I'm just going to open. I loved these 3 episodes. It's a completely different story to last week. I know there have been character arcs. It's a 3-arc structure for the season. We've had 4 stories of 3 episodes. The way I've thought about this with, kind of a week with Gorma, I guess because they 1 day since this, I sort of looked at the Gorman massacre as the season finale. Because the first arc had set them up, they'd put plans in motion. The second was really building it, and last week was last week when we get Mothma escaping the Senate. That could have been the final episodes of Andor, and they felt like a season finale to what they'd built up. Whereas yesterday, I don't want to say it was tying up loose ends, that's really unfair. Yesterday, the episode arcs as such are Luthen and Claire, and then that goes into Rogue One. It is the Rogue One prequel episodes. It is episode 3.98 of Star Wars. And I think it worked perfectly to be the ending, which I don't know what your thoughts were watching it, but I know that it moves forward every year. So on paper, in my head, I was like, this is set a year before Rogue One. And when we get the opening sequence, and I sat there like, oh shit, they're doing like a Rogue One thing. Oh, this isn't going to go well because they're not going to find out for another year. And then you realize is that no. This is like day before Rogue One. This is, the Rogue One to A New Hope. This is that to this. And I loved it so much. And it's where the arc shifted into that structure of, hey, Andor's series is kind of finishing and let's get him to the Rings of Kafri. And I loved the show for doing that as an overview. I know that's a simplistic way of talking about the 3 episodes, but we are going to talk about them episode by episode today. I know each week we've had a different structure. Episode 1, which you joined me when we sort of spoke about the Empire and the Rebels and Andor's story. Episodes 2 and 3, as in the videos we've done, that then became the discussion on Gorma, then Coruscant. So this week is the most traditional we're going to do. We're going to talk the 3 episodes. And as we said, because it's a spoilers discussion, because the show is done, nothing is no longer off limits. And where we are going to open this with is R.I.P. Lonnie. He deserved better. The hero, ultimately. And where I'm going to even go this, before we even get to his death, the opening sequence of Lonnie reaching out to Luthen, which we probably knew the direction this would go with regards to these. Did you expect? I know they don't say Death Star, and I know the key to these story episodes were they discover it's a Death Star in Rogue One. The only thing they can have in this story arc is knowing there is a weapon being built. What did you think of getting that so early with Lonnie and Luthen and where the story goes?
For me, it harked really back to season 1. He had that wonderful speech with Lonnie and Luthen, where Luthen's like, I'm fighting for a sunrise I shall never see. And obviously we'll get more into the episodes we go along, but ultimately you do see that. It's just before the dawn. He doesn't quite see it all come to fruition. And Lonnie, I expected him, like, they were hashing out ideas. Like, look, what have you found out? All right, what are you going to do for me and my wife and my child? it's Yavin. Yavin's the prize, but obviously he doesn't get delivered on. To say I wasn't expecting it is kind of wrong, because I was, in one way. Only because with Tony Gilroy's fantastic writing, nothing was off the table. Especially with how high the stakes are for this thing in particular. When they've pieced together the Gorman Massacre, when they pieced together what's happening with the Senate, obviously when we get to A New Hope, the Senate has just been dissolved. That's not that far back now from where we've just been, so we know it's still an ongoing thing. So to see all these loose ends coming together, as we said, I wasn't not expecting it, but at the same time, it was still, Lonnie deserved better than that. He deserved it. I do hope that somewhere in the lore, somewhere, his wife and child do get taken care of by the rebels, but it's Luthen showing his absolute ruthlessness for the cause. And that's the blunt nature of it, of Luthen doing exactly what it takes. And then you have Clea on the side, who's obviously been supporting him throughout, and you find about her story, her journey as we go into it. But no, it was both expected and unexpected. It was just a shame because there could have been more to that character, I think. You could have had him go and work in the rebel base on Yavin, could have been at Hoth, could have been, in those data centers, could have been in the base, because the Rebel Alliance always needed more experts. So it was a resource wasted, but I think it was more of the information that was needed. So wasn't unexpected, but at the same time, brilliant piece of writing for it.
Yeah, and I loved that for the first time. I don't want to say that Luthen felt fear, but he, when he's being told they're on to you now, they've got you, Luthen knows, I'm done now. I'm done. My story's done. Sorry, Lonnie, you're done too. But Clea, who would be the loose end of loose ends, and this is where the episode becomes one of the strongest, I think, character episodes in the whole 2 seasons. Clea is obviously allowed to survive. And we say allowed because we know if Luthen needed to, he would have killed her. If he wanted to, he would have killed her, but he didn't. And we'll get into some of the flashbacks and what the pair were up to with their history. But I loved that instantly. Not got us back on track, but the beauty of season 2 for me has been these 1 year gaps have felt like there's been a 1 year gap. This isn't an aftermath of Gorman. I know that was episode 9, but this wasn't the aftermath of, let's say Dedra, I'm mourning Cyril. No. This is a year ago. What's Dedra doing a year later? She's finally found him. She finally knows who it is. And time has passed, which is, I think, a really important thing that I don't think the show gets enough credit for. It does give maybe some fans it's the niggliest of criticisms, which is I've seen a lot of discussion online that we didn't get a lot of scenes with Andor in K2 because, he gets K2 at the end of episode 9 of season 2, which gives him 3 episodes together. I understand that. I think because I've seen, not just because Tony Gilroy said it, but when Tony Gilroy sort of pointed out the obviousness last week in an interview, he said, I love K2, but if you think about it, he can't really be used on missions. He's an Imperial security droid. He stands out. It isn't going to work in story if you really think about it. And hearing that kind of open the lenses a bit more, that when we get a great sequence of K2, which we'll talk about later on, it is very much that, look at Rogue One. He's left in the ship in so many of these big sequences. He's always left to look out because he's too powerful. And the way they did the security droids last week as well, not because we saw them murdering people, but it didn't feel like, look, a security droid. It felt like, that thing is going to rip you to shreds. And him on a mission? Yeah, these rebels aren't going to be struggling for many missions with K2 on board. So I understand that decision not to do so. I love that we got a bit of them together. I love Alan Tudyk, and we'll get to him later on. But yeah, bringing it back to Luthen and setting the plans in motion, I wasn't expecting Galen Erso being mentioned in the first episode of the final batch. Jeddah as well. And again, I haven't rewatched it since I saw it yesterday. Now I know that it's set literally moments in the day or two before Rogue One. It's a bit different to me thinking at 8 a.m. yesterday, this is a year before, these guys aren't going to make it out, the info is not going to get passed on. So I'm glad it wasn't that. But where we then get, I guess if we segue into one of the big moments, or I say there's so many big moments, but Dedra finally meeting Luthen Rael, which, he's burning up the shop. I love whatever he's doing. I don't know what he's pouring onto his radio records, but I love he's going to destroy what he set up. He knows they're onto him. He's got to cause it. The moment the shop bell goes, you just knew like something's going to happen. I wasn't expecting Dedra. I should have been. And we were right to, but I loved how they wrote the scene that I'm trying to think of a fair comparison, but I've not got many, but they're playing chess with each other. Luthen knows exactly who Dedra is, yet they've never met. Dedra at this point now knows exactly who Luthen is, but they've never met. And the discussion with each other is figuring out who's going to drop character, who's going to say they know who the other is first. And the moment in which she pulls out the unit from episode 3 of season 1, the original thing that led to Andor being hired that brought Luthen to Ferrix in the first place, there was the checkmate. That was the moment in which he knew we're done here, which was perfect. Bringing in the knife just before, talking all the historic, I think he says a great line, something like, "Oh, there's only 2 frauds in this shop," and it's obviously them talking about one another. I love the vocal sparring, but that sequence before he offs himself. What did you think about 2 characters who finally come head to head?
It felt very much like a to kind of give a spin on it. It's almost like a mafia and undercover cop situation. They both know what's up. They both know the game is over. It's who's going to blink first to at least go, okay, jig's up, you're done kind of situation. As soon as that bell goes, because I was expecting more of a raid situation. I was more expecting her to not take any chances. But it's her hubris and her pride that gets in the way. It's the, I've got you, and I want you to know that I've got you situation.
Yeah.
It's so well done. And name's good. Denise Scoff, who plays
Denise Go, yeah.
Go, yeah. So her acting in that scene is fantastic. To be fair, for me, she's been the star of season 2 in terms of her acting, taking it to another level. You go from Gorman to here. You go from the panic attack to pride to somebody who's walked in like the cat who's got the cream, who's gone, finally, I have you now. It's such an imperial thing, and I love it. And what I love, though, also, is that when she does take it out, she places the flight recorder and goes, here you go. What do you make of this? It's the checkmate. And Luthen just goes, yeah, 2 can play at that game, and then offs himself or tries to, and it's just the perfect. So you see the realization, he goes, oh, no, this isn't how this is supposed to work. Get the cavalry in here now. Get me a bed. This is not how this ends. I have gone behind people's back to get this done. I'm bringing them in alive. And it goes back to Partagas before of, you built the legend before you found the man. Next time round, bring them in, then make them famous. And she wanted her satisfaction. She wanted her final payoff to go, all right, this will get me back on track. This will get me back in the good books. And this is what I need. And ultimately, it backfires in a huge way, leading to one of my favorite things, which we'll talk about when we get to episode 3. But it's just a cracking scene. I mean, I talk about Denise's acting in this, but also Skarsgård. Stellan Skarsgård absolutely knocks out the park. And he's pouring like the gallium or whatever it is, liquid metal, over the console to get rid of it. And you see his reaction. He smiles and goes, right, one last show. You can see in his eyes, it's that, all right, I've got one final performance before I have to end. And I love the sparring, as you talk about that vocal backwards and forwards where they're talking about it all. And finally he goes, okay, fair enough. I've shown you the knife. You haven't twigged. That's on you. Haha, one more. And it's just, I could go on and on about this scene, so I'll stop here. But it's just one of those scenes that the writing was perfect. The acting made it how it is. It's just spot on.
The line, and this has stuck with me, I thought was just unbelievable. And there's many great lines in the show, and this is another one to add to the speech book I would like to have made one day. There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you. And I was just sat there like...
It's so good.
That's powerful. It's so powerful, and he's sort of mocking her idea of what the freedom is, and it's such a great sequence, and he's absolutely caught her off guard, and it is right of his character that he isn't gonna. As much as I'd have loved Lonnie to survive, if Lonnie survives that scene, he gives up Yavin to the others. Lonnie survives that scene, they're all done. There is no rebellion. They get to squash it, and we don't get Star Wars. And Luthen's moment, it's such a great, again, bringing the dagger in, and the fact he's not trying to do a fight, he's not trying to think stupid. He just knows, I am a loose end. He stuck true to his character of 2 seasons, of 19 years at this point, because we'll get to those flashbacks, but he is the loose end that needs to go, and his secrets will die with him, as it should be. I loved it. I thought it was unbelievable. And Dedra, who has been so competent for the first 21 episodes of the show, has completely falls apart over the next 2. We'll get to Partagaz later, because there's some really good stuff that's implied that I want to try and talk to you about too. But it really just set the rest of this episode up, because we don't get Yavin in this episode. The whole episode is Coruscant flashbacks, and we then get to find out more about Claire. Now, I don't know if you saw the Tony Gore interview on Tuesday daytime, maybe, but basically said, if you're a fan of Claire, you're going to really enjoy episode 10, which was nice to see. I believe it's Elizabeth Dula on the pronunciation. I could have pronounced wrong. She's been a very great character in the series, but we haven't. I don't say she's not had a lot to do. It's always looked like she's around the shop, not just physically in terms of working there, but when Luthen looks like he's straying, she's sharpening him back up. She's getting him to full strength, and their relationship is something you want to explore more. And if he's allowing her to live, there has to be reason for it. And where the next sort of 40 minutes goes with interweaving her backstory to lead up to her having to kill him for the rebellion is some of the best character development in Star Wars as a whole. And I've really enjoyed Claire in the show. But after this episode, it feels so much better. Luthen, who was an enigma, what was his background? What was his story? What led him to, as I let's become the father of the rebellion? How did he get this antique shop that's probably expensive as fuck, because he's doing it on Coruscant and he's got bare Padme Amidala stuff there, which syncs up. We'll talk about Naboo later. But I want your thoughts. We get this first introduction. He is Sergeant Rail. No, not Sergeant Rail. I've forgotten his name. That's embarrassing. His name's not Luther at this point. Is it Lael, maybe? I can't remember.
Something like that.
But he is a sergeant in what looks like, and I believe, is the very, very early Imperial clothing. So this is, I'm not going to predict years. This is probably this is probably straight after the Clone Wars, I reckon. He's a sergeant in a team. They are massacring innocent individuals with firing squads. You hear the screaming, which is painful, and the point of view shot of the girl hiding in the ship. Powerful stuff. And I like the fact it wasn't some big drawn out, I'm this big soldier that's gonna kill my unit and escape and have this new life. It was, we get to meet him once the Empire's already took a toll on him. He's clearly not in the right fit of mind to be doing that. He isn't wanting to be that, and he knows what he's doing is wrong. And the way I kind of interpret the scene and what will follow is Claire becomes his, not conscience as such. He adopts her as a daughter figure whilst teaching her not just the way of the rebellion or how to rebel, but she is training her to, not say training her to fight. I'm trying to make a good comparison here. So it's another adopted daughter. You can look at Bail Organa. I don't want to say Saul Guerrero because he was a terrible stepdad, but he took in Jyn Erso. And these are characters that have been took in by people that have been at the front of the rebellion, whether we knew it at the time or we didn't. But I think Claire, in the right words, becomes his conscience of a sort, that he's able to not use her to fix his errors, because that's the wrong, but it's almost like a fresh start, and he wants to do right with the world. And Claire was the sort of the gift that enabled him to do that. I think that's where I'm going with it. It's really hard to explain. There's probably a simpler term. And I love them bonding and becoming together. But before I even get some of the other sequences, what did you think on his intro as the sergeant?
I like how we got just the information we needed. There wasn't the full-on, here's an episode dedicated to his backlog. Like, there's no, you don't need to know the man before you meet him kind of thing. It was just a very quick, you got what you needed by surrounding information. You didn't need too much. Because you're not focusing on that, you're focusing on the man he was set to become. I love the PTSD. I love the make the voices stop, the drinking, everything else. He sat there trying to basically justify to himself why he's there. It turns him into the callous man we see later on. But at this point, he's just on that verge of breaking. You can see it. And he's made his choice. You can see he's made his choice. He's trying to work it out. And then he spots Claire. It's enough of an information dump that you understand the man without needing to know the full 2-hour backstory as we go along. And it's like we'll talk about when we talk about the third episode in the arc, as to then Rogue One and episode 4. So it's enough that you know who Luthen is without needing to know the full story. You then obviously do get into that role where he spots Claire. You can see this decision. He makes a split-second decision from he could just immediately rat her out and go, no, what the hell are you doing here? You should be out there dying with the rest of them. Or it's the stay there, I've got this. And you see he has wonderful moment. He's staring into the camera. It's the point of view.
Yeah.
And it's the trust. You see him basically have to convince her to trust him without her saying anything, without him saying not enough. In terms of it's very little, it's very quick, because he knows that he's on borrowed time. He knows she especially is on borrowed time. And you have that one moment when they get interrupted. The Great has to go back on. Someone else comes into the shuttle and he has to stand there and go, yeah, I'm right behind you. You go do your job. He goes, oh, your radio's not even switched on, kind of thing. And it's this wonderful moment where he's making excuses. And you can see that very first layer of misdirection go down. And you can see as soon as it's done, he's like, I can do this. This is okay. He slips into it. And from that moment on, you get Luthen Rail. You get the character. And to see that, and as you know what's happening at the same time, so it's like the flashbacks of Claire as she's dealing with the news, it's a wild concoction. But it works. As I said, my favorite part is more less is more. And you didn't need a lot. You got just what you needed from the visuals and a few moments of dialogue. And it's just that immediate effect of just make the voices stop. It's so powerful. It's incredible.
I think juxtapositions are key in this as well. You go to the first 2 episodes, particularly the big sequence of Mothma's dancing is probably the best example just from music alone, let alone the instance. But where the episode sort of follows on from these 2 meetings, that again, it's not an origin. I don't need, no disrespect intended for like comic readers, I don't need like a Luthen Rail one-shot comic. Someone will probably do one, but
I definitely read it.
Yeah. And what I loved most is we don't need to see him becoming wealthy, getting enough money to buy onto Coruscant. It's here's them bartering at a shitty little village. Here's them bartering in markets in somewhere a bit nicer. And then here is them on Naboo. And the costumes in this episode, in this season, Michael Wilkinson, who's the costume designer, has done incredible work, particularly with Gorma. To see them, again, not needing to tell you, the audience, this is how they do it. They clearly made it work because they're not hustling. They're not hustling at all. They know exactly what they're buying and what they're selling. And it makes sense that across a 15-year period to where we get to at the start of Andor, he is on Coruscant. He is high class. He is in the know with politicians, with Imperials. He's a very wealthy individual that's been put in a place of power to build a network. And that has been his intention from day one. And I loved that idea for the backstory. The young Claire actress was phenomenal in some of the sequences as well. following the kids to the not a massacre, but the firing squadron on innocent children. Again, how do you want to make the Imperials look terrifying? Firing squads. I don't know if they've been in Star Wars before, but this is Tony Gilroy. Obviously, well, that's not a historical thing. It's still very real firing squads, but to just bring a real world thing that we haven't probably seen in Star Wars before, and I think without any form of disrespect to animation, because this isn't that. The key demographic of animation is children in terms of an audience. There's nothing wrong with saying that. You have different levels of it. You have a Star Wars Resistance, as you said, Tales of the Jedi. Not Tales of the Jedi, sorry, the High Republic one that's on YouTube.
Young Jedi Adventures.
Then you got your Clone Wars, where you got Asajj Ventress kissing impale people on lightsabers. So animations got different, but primarily animations for children. To put that in live action is something else we've not seen, and you can't put that in animation. I mentioned the Ventress kissing one. That got removed from Cartoon Network, that like 5-second moment. So that's where we're sort of going with these parallels. But Claire infiltrating the hospital, we cut to modern day. Now, I know the hospital's been named after the Supreme Chancellor from the High Republic. You've sent me a text message to that.
Yeah, Lena.
I've seen that a lot, and that's probably very cool. I just love seeing a hospital in Star Wars. And I guess where we'll go with this next bit is pull it back to Dedra. Hyatt comes in, who essentially has her arrested, pins it all on her, finds out she's basically nabbed his operation, done it on his day off, which I thought's hilarious, if I'm honest. There's doing an Imperial raid on someone's day off because that's the day to do it. And as you kind of said, that it's also calculated. Her journey has come. She got too eager. She became too incompetent. She wanted them too quick. She didn't have the patience. And that has cost her for the first time in otherwise a very stellar Imperial career, if we can even call it that. But Claire having to infiltrate the hospital, I loved, because again, it didn't need to be some big, lavish, I'm going to break into a prison vault to get Luthen out across 3 episodes. It was just as simple as, he is on life support. He is my father. I need to kill him. But that's what he wants. That's what he needs to happen as well. It's not me choosing to. That's exactly what has to happen for this rebellion to live, to defeat the Empire. It has to be done. And the flashbacks being interweaved with what she's up to, I think the Naboo's the key one. She sat there with I think with like a milkshake or something. She's got a milkshake. She's a child. And he's also there go on, blow up all of these people. Do it. And she's more than eager to do it. And I loved that. And it goes back to that relationship again that, in earlier episodes in the season when he is struggling, she is the one almost slapping him into shape. But listen, sort yourself out. We've got to get through this. And I love that she is as important to him, to the rebellion, that it isn't just, that's Luthen's assistant. They are hand in hand with each other, or with what they do, with what they have to do. And I've really enjoyed that she just went on to be so much more than just Luthen's shop assistant who's also working for them. So many TV shows would have a character like that, not like kill them off as fridging, but it'd be like, we'll get the assistant, we'll put them in peril. To have the assistant end up being on an equal level to them to an extent, through their relationship, we find that out. Not to the rebellion, but to their relationship, we know as viewers, they are as important as one another. He wouldn't have got as far without her, vice versa, obviously. And the Naboo scene, I loved. I know it doesn't say Naboo. I know it doesn't show us really. We know, yeah. And if you really want to go into it, they're like day one, not day one, but the first big terrorist attack they did. I'm going to call it terrorist attack because in this context is fucking Palpatine's home planet. Like, they've gone to the Emperor's home, but granted, he doesn't care about Naboo clearly. And we didn't need to chuck a Panaka cameo in or anything like that, but that is their first attack as a rebel duo, you could probably say, or at least big on paper moment. And it was his home planet. That's ballsy. And I loved interweaving it again into the hospital. But what did you think of Naboo? Did you instantly see it and get excited?
Oh, yeah. You spot those dome buildings, you know where you are. You see what is essentially Lake Coma. You know exactly where you are. You know exactly the surroundings. And you do have that thing as, it's Palpatine's home. They've gone and stuck it right to him. But no, interweaving that with the hospital was just genius. And I love what you said about going basically take him off life support. But what I love even more is the fact that she doesn't need to know that he didn't survive. She sees the ambulance, she clocks what's gone on, and she goes, if he has survived, I need to make sure he doesn't, because he is far too valuable to be left alive. And it's such a, it could come across as callous, but it's not. It's caring, because she knows also he would do the same for me, not to me. And that's the difference there. It's a, they know what the score is. They also know that their time has basically run out, and she's there. I also love, as you go through it, you see the reaction. Oh, it's a team of 3. You know, there's multiple people here to get this kind of scale done. No, it's just one woman. It's a one-woman army who's gone in and absolutely wrecked face. And I must admit, as I was going through it, I almost expected her to blow up the granny in the wheelchair. So what was going on? It was so, when you look at the whole button press and like, because Luthen's lesson was not doing the deed, it was why we're doing the deed. So when he then presents her with the button, she goes to press it. It's like, no, I'll take this one. And then he tells her when to watch. He tells her how to watch. He explains why so well without, again, saying too much. And you do have this wonderful scene, obviously. She's going through the hospital. And it does that. It cuts between the two. You see the initial reaction. You see the, as I said, the firing squad, which, you know, again, for me, you talk about the differences between the animation, the live action, everything we've seen before. It also reminds me of season 1 when we had the Bix's torture. You have that in episode 5 where it's Han with, they didn't even ask any questions. This is obviously that, but ramps up to 11 with the torture device. And obviously we get that at the end of, I think it's the second arc of episodes where Bix and Cass go and take out the doctor who did that. But yeah, in this hospital scene, you have her going through, knowing what's happening, and you can see at various points, obviously these various flashbacks kick in, of she is replaying the life that's led her to this point. And when she gets there, you see the emotion. When she does finally unplug him, as it were, you see the reaction, see her crying. She has been careful and cautious right up until that last moment where she has to kiss him goodbye. Not in a sexual way, just as a father-daughter kind of kiss on the forehead kind of way of just, she's saying goodbye, because despite everything, they worked as a team. She did help build him up, but he also brought her along for the ride, and the pair of them got to where they were. And when the kind of end was coming on Coruscant, he knew he had to stay behind. Claire, I think he would have been okay. If she had left for Yavin, he would have endorsed it. He would have gone, yep, that's okay. You have done more than enough for me here. But the fact that she stuck around to say goodbye at the end and do that, it was, again, credit Tony Gilroy in the writing department, credit the acting in that scene, credit to what it's due. And as I said, when Luthen and Lonnie had that moment in season 1 of the whole, I'm fighting for a sunrise I'll never see, she at that moment knows he's now not going to see the fruits of the labor, because she knows exactly what's coming. She just had that moment on the stairs of him telling her all the things she needs to memorize and trying to kick her out to go, look, go to the rebellion, tell them this, and repeating it over and over again. And it is, it's incredible.
It's such a perfect way, I think, to end not just the episode, but his character. That, you know, we not to talk too much about like editing, but just his body on the table, and it's not a quick cut. It's almost like a sign of respect that we're going to not just close the episode with him, but we're going to give him time. And I think it was a really not sweet ending for him, but the character deserves that kind of ending. He isn't. Andor as a series has very much been the process of, we kill someone off, we'll show them for like a second, if that, because that's the reality of life and death. They're with you one moment and they're not the next. To give the first character a lot, I don't even know what the term is, but to spend time with them as they've passed, I thought was really special. Martha off screen, you know, the Gorman Massacre, people we've met, second here, second there. Season 1, Narkina Prison, people getting shot, quick second of the close-up done. But Luthen, we get the dimming of the lights closing into the credits. I think was a great way to end that first episode. And that got me pumped for the next one, because at that point I started to realize that again, this isn't, this is going to be an episode, but this is going to be like clearly a very tight one, and a lot's going to happen because now Luthen's off the board, Dedra's in a prison cell, and we haven't been to Yavin for an hour, which kind of means we need to get to Yavin quickly. And where they pick up with episode 11, I'm going to stick on Dedra first before we talk Yavin, if I'm honest. The one, the only, director Orson Krennic comes back once more. The interrogation scene, which was an incredible sequence. Dedra back in the place where she met Cyril for the first time, which I think is worth mentioning. But even the camera framework, the moment, if you go to Rogue One, sorry to jump ahead, Krennic's kind of not an idiot in the film, but Krennic is like, he answers to Tarkin. Tarkin's the one that's fucked him up the Death Star, and there's office politics in play as an understatement. You could call it galaxy politics, maybe. And we see Krennic as the fool, you could say, in that film. So it's been so reassuring in the second season to see Krennic not only as an antagonist, but as an intimidating villain and an intimidating tool of the Empire. The camera shot where it refuses to show his face when he enters, to keep it on Dedra, who is scared, and we just get Ben Mendelsohn's sort of chin, I thought was quite chilling. And I did wonder, are we going to just have her executed? Like this, surely not. But you're thinking Vader, because we've seen the Empire do this time and time again. They talk about how they are there for peace, but there is no freedom in the regime of the Empire. There is always someone to answer to. Alex from Star Wars explains in a great post today, and it's Qui-Gon Jinn's, there's always a bigger fish. And it's Cyril, Dedra, Partagaz, Krennic, Tarkin, Vader, Palpatine. I know what you're thinking. Yes, Tarkin was above Vader, but for the sake of that graphic, it is absolutely fundamentally correct. And the scene in which Krennic destroys her, not just career-wise, story-wise, but she's been so obsessed with axes, she's accidentally leaked Death Star plans, which is terrible in the context that she knew about the Death Star and she shouldn't. She worked that out and did not give a flying fuck. She worked that out because she was obsessed with Luthen. And I love that the character's obsession for results for Axis is not only her downfall, but Krennic's, but the Empire's, and what leads to the rebellion. What did you think of that entire sequence?
I mean, as you say, it's the fucking domino effect, isn't it? That proper start the chain where I love that bit where he comes in, like he just presses on her head.
I know.
Just walking around there.
It's like Devil Fingers returned.
It is. But what I love, though, is where he just stands there, goes, basically, say the name. Go on. You know what I'm talking about, but I need to know you know that I know what you're talking about. And said the words Death Star. Not even. I was expecting Stardust. I was expecting the name Project Stardust or something along that line. But no, to say Death Star, for an Imperial to say Death Star, it's big. And again, it's that cat's got the cream, bigger fish to fry, all the rest of it. You can see at that point, Krennic's like, okay, you know what? I gave you a chance with Gorman, and you almost screwed it up. And you have been trying to do this thing with Axis for so many years, and guess what? It failed. You got him, but you didn't get him correctly. You went behind people's back, and oh, look, you've had information. How long have you had the information for? Setting her up for failure, setting her up for that moment of, yeah, you've had this for 2 years, and yet didn't say a damn thing. It's just wonderful. And you can see her working out of going, I've been hoisted on my own petard. I have screwed myself over. And it is that thing. It's like, how many people know? How many people did you tell? This project isn't just secret. We know, like, take Rebels, for example, when they go and find Geonosis. There's nothing there. They have wiped the bugs off the face of the planet. And then you talk about then Rogue One. All these people are working on different parts. There's a wonderful book called Catalyst, which is set, again, just before Rogue One, and delves more into the relationship between Galen Erso and Director Krennic and all the rest of it. And all these things are set up in their own little cells so that no one can put everything together. And finally, an Imperial does it, and immediately it gets leaked. And that's the start of the domino effect. That downfall starts from there. It's why we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the third episode in the arc. But it's why, for me, Rogue One is now the actual finale of Andor. It's now the end point. And it feels that way, but it also, this sets up Krennic so when you get there, I mean, we talked about this after Celebration in our little chat about how Tony Gilroy said this will make you see Rogue One in a different light. We weren't sure what he meant by that. We were excited to see what he meant by that. This sets up, and Krennic is one of the things, as you say, he's not a fool when it comes to it, especially when you get to dealing with Tarkin, his boss, his next level up. Where Tarkin's like, oh, I'm taking this all now. It's like, you stand here amidst my achievements, not yours. All the way back to his then interrogation of Dedra, he knows what's at stake. He knows what's going on, and it sets it all up beautifully. That scene is fantastic, especially later on when she gets visited by her as well, and it's fantastic. But to see, what I love though, seeing it from the outside as well, where you see Krennic walk along and you see her in the cell. She's trying to work things out. As soon as he steps in, it's, straighten the uniform, sit up a little straighter. She's still trying to act like the Imperial that she feels she is. She's still trying to be this strong headed ISB that hasn't got a crack. But we've seen those cracks appear from season 1, where she is extremely menacing, up to Gorman, where you see the little flaws come into it. And you then see it here finally, where all that pressure, all that self-doubt, everything has finally come crumbling around her. And it's a fantastic scene, but as you said, it sets Krennic up beautifully. It tees him up for Rogue One, and it tees up the seriousness, because we know how serious the Death Star is. We know it is a super weapon. We know what it does and how it works, etc., etc. But this starts to set that up in motion. It starts to show how serious the Empire are at keeping it a secret, because they know that if it was revealed too early, they would get targeted. It would be destroyed. They wanted it kept until it was finished. Ultimately, one lucky farm boy shoots a proton torp right down the thermal exhaust port and it all goes up. But this is the beginning of that downfall, as you say, and it is perfect.
And Krennic isn't afraid at that point, and because he is the superior officer in the scenario, he is a director ultimately. He's not a Grand Moff, but he's the director. He's comfortable because he can put that pressure on them, which he knows he's going to get from his bosses. And the sequence in which, we've known Dedra, she is a villain, she's a fascist, and she deserves what's going to come to her, but to see it spelled out in a way that, you fucked up big time, love. Like, you really have fucked this one. And I think what works really well, and I don't know if you've clocked this, I haven't listened to any of the podcasts yet, by the way. I've sent a couple of messages to you, Dave and Sam, and a few other people I know, but I want to talk about Partagaz very briefly. I know we will get his finale later, but Partagaz, who's become one of my favorite characters, one of the most competent characters in the entire show. Love him. Anton Lesser, legendary British actor. Partagaz would let Dedra do those stuff in season 1 and 2 because he knew her. I'm not saying he's a father figure to her. We know she grew up in an Imperial Kinderbox. She's got no family, no emotion. She's been raised into that area, which is why she's very good at what she does. And Partagaz saw something in her. Yeah, she would be a beat around the bush. She'd overstep the markers somewhere, but he not protected her, but he knew she gets results. Even though what she's doing isn't entirely correct, her outcome for the ISB is exactly what we need. She completed the Gorma project. She told Krennic, what to do. That is what they went with. That is her victory to an extent. We're going to call it a victory in their context, not obviously the real context. And for everything to come crashing down on her first major mistake, yes, she jumped the gun at doing the raid and cocking up at the hotel, which ironically, the hospital, it's Hyatt's fault, because if she hadn't been arrested, she is standing outside that door when everything goes wrong. but it is on her. And, the Empire's going to punish that. And we'll get to the punishment later. But let's go to Yavin for a bit. I can't believe... this sounds very terrible. I'm glad it's just two of us, because we can go as deep into this as we want. Love having three people, but we'll be on for like 4 hours. But there will be another video this week. Let's talk going on Yavin. So, the message has gone out through Claire at the spare flat, I guess we could call it. The legendary Will, who I will say, he's stepped up in season 2. He's been in a couple of episodes in season 1. He is the one that throws the bomb in Ferrix that really gets the war side of it going. I was really surprised to see him survive season 2. I'm just going to say it. I'm really happy he survived season 2 as well, actually. I've loved Will's character. From getting high on Rhydonium of Saw Gerrera to being integral in getting the plan to the Death Star, the boys come full circle. He's pulling people on every planet he goes to as well. He's very well connected. He's got someone. I forgot the planet from the first episode. He's got someone there. He's got someone in Gorma. Obviously, he stays with her. Fair enough. He goes back to her in the massacre and still survives. And he has a limp in the season. So it isn't just he got better. He's probably not a field operative. I'd say that. But the fact that 1 year has passed. He isn't just waltz like there's nothing happened to him. He's had injuries for this rebellion. And for Cassian and K2 to go with Melshi, which we'll get to as well, on a little mission together to Coruscant to get Claire to bring her back, another off-license mission, which we know Draven's already pissed off about. Before I even jump ahead to the trip to Coruscant, I just loved the scene of K2, Melshi, and Cassian playing. And I know it's really childish to say, in a series which has never wasted a moment, and this isn't a filler scene either, I'm not going to say this, but because there were 12 episodes covering 4 years, everything has been of the utmost importance, including this scene. But it is nice to get scenes with them that we would not have the luxury of having. Had there been 5 seasons of 12 episodes, sure, we'd get a whole season of these 3 guys together, but to really get into that Rogue One mindset, these are the 2 Narkina 5 survivors that we know of. They've been for a lot. They've reunited. They had great chemistry in Rogue One. And now we get to see them having some sort of a life together. We get K2 in the mix as well, who we know in this 1 year period has obviously grown close to Cass. It's one scene of 3 people playing cards, but it does so much for them as characters. And I don't know if you've got anything to say on that before we get to the mission. I just wanted to give it its moment because I just really liked it. And it's a cursed scene, knowing what happens to all 3 of them, in Rogue One.
I mean, it's wonderful, right? Because we've talked about episode 1. There was no Cass. There was no Andor in Andor. And we get to this episode 2. And we get to the beginning here. And yeah, it's a wonderful scene because you do get that camaraderie. You see the whole K2 sat there going, you're cheating. I don't know how you're cheating, but you're cheating. And you can see you work it out there. They're taking the piss at each other. It is wonderful. And then you do see it as Will comes into it. He is limping. And you get that scene of, oh, no, this is serious. We need to kind of pay attention here. And, we'll get into the mission in a minute. But again, you start to see Cassian closer to how he is in Andor. In Rogue One than he has at the beginning of Andor. You get to see... Finally, you can see at this point, he's accepted that Bix has gone. He's accepted that he needs to do what he needs to do for the rebellion. And you can see that he's finally in the flow of things. We'll get to his ending in the show later on. But no, it's a wonderful little scene. And it plays off. And I'm just going to jump back briefly. We talked about Partagaz. The relationship between Partagaz and Claire. So Partagaz and Dedra is similar to Luthen and Claire in that same I see something in you role. But the outcome is so much more different. One gets thrown under the bus, despite getting warnings. The other one is there right to the end. And it's so wonderful to see this particular payoff because you see Partagaz basically go, I warned you. Basically, that's his whole thing. It's like, I tried to warn you. Krennic has his whole moment again of, you were warned, you did the thing. And to here as well, that whole you did it on my day off, damn it, it's a wonderful thing. So yeah, you get to this point of Cassian, Melshi, I mean, Melshi is my only gripe from those previous 3 episodes was Melshi's little shoehorn in, oh look, he's here kind of moment, which I didn't think was necessary.
Oh, really? That's fair enough.
But it just felt it was a little bit just kind of tacked on there for that. I think it was a bit clunky. But to be fair, if that's my one nitpick from 12 episodes, I am perfectly okay with that.
I think I'd say, not to defend it, but I think because he popped up in season 1, you needed, if he'd have just rocked up in that jungle scene at night playing cards. The one thing I was saying I didn't get to talk about last week, sorry, the scene in which he, Vel finds the gun. So that is, I don't know if I sent you guys the photo. That gun, Cassian took off Cyril, takes it to, obviously has it with him during Aldani. Then after Aldani, it's then obviously sat in Niamos whilst they're in prison. Is Niamos that place was called?
Yes.
Yeah. And then obviously Cass gives him the gun in Niamos, which is very fair play that Melshi kept that gun for like 3 more years. Good going. But I love that even that weapon now has a legacy in itself.
Oh yeah, no, that part is great. I just felt the actual scene itself.
Yeah, the putting the hands up's very like.
Yeah, that one was a little clunky. I loved him being in there. It makes sense. It was just that one particular moment. But yeah, no, you have that card scene. You have them sit around, and it's almost that. For what it harkens back for me, you see this a lot in World War II films specifically. It's usually the RAF or something like that, where the boys are sat around, they're playing cards, they're drinking. They know they have to be ready at any moment. This is the only downtime they get. It's a very similar vibe to that of them sitting there playing cards. They know that, the rebellion is literally just outside their front door. They know they've got to go and do stuff. So they're taking what time they can, having a drink and chilling because they know at any moment they could die. And it's a wonderful little moment of humanization before chaos kicks in.
And chaos itself, let's go back to Coruscant one more time, which I again, you're bringing episode 10. How'd you get Claire to Yavin? Claire does want to go to Yavin. We have her needing it. Now, and this is where I know you love the ISB, and I've loved the scenes in this. We get to the competency of the ISB, right? How do we find this person who's an immediate threat? Partagaz makes the absolute correct call in saying, put them as a wanted person. She's got the deadliest infection. Everyone stay away. We'll put everything on and we'll find her straight away. That's probably worked loads in Coruscant, by the way. Ends up costing Partagaz, and we'll get to him later on. The ISB working out the old coding through Dedra, by the way, helping them whilst in prison, helping her, who was, he was her, what would you call it when they're like underneath them in the workplace? Because he was helping her in season 1. She was getting him into those meetings, and he, like many of them, they're all climbing the ladder to push each other off as they get into the top. And the competency to have them work out Claire's location with a squad, whilst we've got Cassian, K2, and Melshi there. I loved this. I'm not putting it down for laughs, but as a middle episode cliffhanger, oblivious in the hotel versus here's the military guys going in to take them out. Loved that setup heading into the finale. But where we then get, and I'm going to jump back to the Tony Gilroy thing I mentioned earlier about how, he spoke about K2 being that he changes the battlefield. The great moment of him walking out and just yeeting that ISB agent over the top. I think I saw a comment and it was like, when you go to play a game on New Game Plus to get the trophy and you put it on easy, and it's just obviously K2 just swatting him out of the path, which is a great comparison. It kind of proved a point that, I guess the question I have with this, I mean, I love K2, I love Alan Tudyk. Do you think they were right to hold him off? Because how they've chosen to put, not necessarily K2, how they've chosen to present the K units in the show, even season 1, that's how Cassian ends up in Narkina 5. He's being impaled against a wall on Blackpool Beach. What do you think of the K units before we get into that final episode?
Well, you had this scene in the U-wing, where it says, I was in a parade of KX units in front of Palpatine, like 200 of them. Like you have K2 reflecting on his memories pre-rebellion. So it's still the same droid, but you can see the change in him. He goes, I used to be part of this. I used to do this kind of thing. He knows. And yeah, when you have an X factor like that, or someone who can literally come in and completely change the way it works, they wanted to get in and out in a more stealthy manner. K2 was the one who came in and saved the day, because you have, again, talking about stormtroopers being terrifying, you have the ISB agents who don't wear helmets, going through this building level by level, working it out, and you can see they're tracking them down at the same time. I was sat there almost going, they're going to screw this up. They're going to catch them. Like, Rogue One's happening. Like, have they not paid attention to this? Now, we had our little joke in the chat about K2's origin story, how they changed it. It's the first time they've just completely axed already established canon lore. So there's a K2 and Cassian comic, and I use the Lando bit of, I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I accept it because it makes sense for this. K2SO, any of the KX droids, they are horrifically powerful. They are beasts of machines. So they also stick out like a sore thumb. So you do have that, and I know that Cassian is like kind of gonna stay here and then guard the ship. I almost expected them to actually nick the Lambda, but I love it when you walk in, you don't see what happens. You just see Imperial bloke on a console, blood everywhere, and K2 just walking off. You know what's about to come. You know he's a wrecking ball. But you know it's because he has sat there and worked it out that the comms have been jammed, and as soon as he clocks it, he goes, "Oh, we're in trouble, and I can't tell them." And it's that drop of the hat moment of like, "Oh crap, well, I need to go and rescue my friends." And of course, when he gets in there, he's an absolute wrecking machine. But yeah, no, it is fantastic. So I do love though, he sat there going over his memories of being in a parade in front of Palpatine, and yet he's like saying, "Last time I've been on Coruscant, the last time I was here was for a parade." Melchi's never been to Coruscant, Andor obviously knows it well. So you bring all these bits together, and it ends up being effectively on locations like a dreary block of London flats, but it works. It works so well because we've totally spoken about this with the volume versus location work, etc. This is one of those times where that location grittiness makes it real, and K2 coming along emphasizes all that. So yeah, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but there's a lot of nuance as to why, he gets left behind for good reason, and then comes and beats that X factor.
Yeah, and I think with those moments, sorry, you've really thrown me there. K2 remembers his memories, which means he remembers the Gorma massacre. He's probably very quiet about that one. That was quite something. But as you mentioned, there's ISB troopers without helmets. Like, competency is something the Empire's not had until this series. And even with the K2 thing, I know obviously you're a fan of the comics. I've seen a lot of things about the comics being ignored. Without getting into the conversation of what's canon or canon, do you at least not mind it? But they've with Andor, in the visual guide for Rogue One, I'm pointing because it's there behind me somewhere. They changed Cassian's home planet, and they had a very easy workaround, which was like, this was his fake planet that he had for the rebellion. You can get away with that, but K2 is the first big one that's been wiped. I am going to state a claim without knowing too much. I think Tony Gilroy is one of the only people that's going to get away with doing that. I don't think they allow anyone to do something such as that, but I'm curious for your thoughts on just my comments there as well.
So for me, I think they basically let him do it because it makes sense for the story. And I think it's the only way they'll ever do this again, is if it makes sense for the story, if we do it for a reason that makes sense both in the wider lore, but also for the story we're trying to tell, they might do it again. It's not, they've already categorically said, like, when it came to Ventress in the Bad Batch, and we spoke about this when the Bad Batch was being aired, you and I had a big old discussion about this. I was really not happy because of we had Dark Disciple, but they came out and said, so, look, we understand people's thoughts, we understand what you're saying, we haven't changed it, and you will find out why. We've just had Tales of the Underworld that bridged that gap and explained it. And I do think this is the story group basically making an executive decision of, for what you're trying to do, the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
We had a story that worked at the time. This now fits our use case better. And because of the nature of it all, they've allowed it to happen. And I have always been a staunch believer in, they put out the books and comics, they make the lore, they give all the surrounding information. Don't change what you're trying to do because it breeds incompetency, and it breeds the whole thing of, we've done it before, we can do it again. And the old EU ethos comes back of 9 different endings and, different galaxies. It kind of convolutes the whole story. And we're going to have Ahsoka, who's really bringing in new additional, the second galaxy and all the rest of it. But that's where that belongs in terms of bringing in new lore into the ethos. This particular change, I might not like it per se in terms of them changing it, but what I do think is that the story group have made a choice with Tony Gilroy and gone, look, he's probably had to go to them and pitch the idea and go, look, this is how I need to do it to get to this point, to then get to Rogue One, to then get to Episode 4. This is why it makes sense. So as much as I might have my gripes and my moans, I believe they've done it at least for a good reason anyway.
Yeah, and that's very fair as well. And I think, it's not something they've done often. And I guess you can also add that, I guess, because it was 2016 or 17 that one shot came out. It
was 2017. It was after
just after the film.
Yeah.
So you can understand a little bit more like, hey, we really want to do this. If Andor the show had been in production in 2017, that one shot comic wouldn't have come out. So I get that. But I think when we look back at Andor, the fact that not like, they were going to change something. They could have easily done away with the Rebel stuff last week with Mothma, but they really did. They put the time into making it work still. Making it work to the point if you don't watch Rebels, it doesn't matter if you haven't missed anything. But 2 little nods is what makes it work as a series and to connect the bridges to one another. Let's talk the breakout. So we get a little shootout. We'll get to Katie's hallway sequence. Can I chuck something on you that I read?
Mm-hmm.
Melshi and Cassian being unaffected by the stun grenade because in Narkina 5, their bodies were essentially used to the electrical shocks because obviously if they weren't winning the day, they were getting shocked. What do you think of that?
It's brutal, but I like it.
Yeah. Whoever clocked that, if it's not real, someone's going to make it real because it makes complete sense. Loved the moment. K2's hallway sequence remarkable. Again, how do you make these draws look terrifying? Hyatt, who we just dislike, even though we don't like Dedra, she's a fascist. You still don't like Hyatt, as you dislike him more than Dedra, and how he was in that entire sequence to get another really disturbing death. He's obviously got a broken neck. K2's just grabbed him by the throat, instantly dead, snapped the throat, and then his flaying corpse is being used as a human shield, and you just see the head stuck at that angle around the hand, and the body just going side to side. That is a disgusting image, and you're kind of there
funny,
great death,
brutal.
Yeah, and it's he deserved it. And again, another great action sequence. Them getting out of Coruscant unscathed. The fact that no one could get to them because Partagas said everyone's looking for this person with the illness. Poor guy. We'll get to him. But before we're going to talk about Partagas. He's going to get his own segment when we get to the. I'm going to call it the Nolan montage, if I'm honest. Let's go back to Yavin. Is this where we basically get the Rogue One conversation before Sunday?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's do this. At this point in time, we start to realize that we are not 1 year before Rogue One now. We are going to be a day or two before Rogue One at this point. The clocks are turning. The brain is going, this is a lot closer to Rogue One than we thought. I've got nothing to say about, them saying, this unit's coming back down. I'm not bothered about that. We get a great reference to General Merrick, who's in Rogue One, who's not in the series. That's a cool nod. We have the same fucking guy, 2 guys I'm going to talk about. This is a glup shito fest. The guy on the radio, and I know that's one of the voice actors from the animated series. In Rogue One, he's there is no Rogue One. That voice is back on the radio again. So there's part one. Part 2, the same guy, I don't know his name, he's got a name, who in Rogue One's running after Mothma screaming, Senator, Senator, he is back in the chair doing his job. And again, I'm starting to think, oh, we really are close to Rogue One. That's just the first few Rogue One characters I can remember off the top of my head. But the landing platform, and we'll just get straight there, we get the Rogue One war room. We bring back the 2 senators, one of which I always forget his name, and he was in Sherlock series as one of the other cops. I've forgotten his name, but he's one of the funny ones from Rogue One where it's like every time Jyn speaks, he just dismisses her in the most ridiculous, taking the piss voice, and I love him for it. And this is what I can't wait to go back to Rogue One, because so many of these little characters. And the female senator is not Mothma. I've forgotten the actress's name. She's had a very successful career since she's been in Dune Part 1. She's been in loads of films, loads of shows. It felt like an event status at this point in time. It felt like the big dogs are here. The Rogue One war room's together. Now, I know we don't have Jimmy Smits's I almost said the wrong Bail Organa. Yeah. Sorry, I thought of another Bail from something else. I know I didn't get you on the episode. What are your thoughts on the recasting on the premise Jimmy Smits was unavailable?
I mean, I read an interview with Tony Gilroy about it. He said, look, we tried to. We did everything we could to line it up. It didn't work. But he was kind of integral to the story. We couldn't not have the character. It worked. The name of the actor escapes me for the moment, but it worked. Benjamin Bratt, that's it. He didn't overplay it. He didn't try to mimic Jimmy Smits, but at the same time, he didn't deviate from the path. He played exactly what he needed to and did the lines exactly how he needed to. He had the right demeanor, the right delivery. So I'm okay with the recasting because he is very necessary for the story. He really is. He is a big part of the rebellion and a big part of Mothma. You needed to have the character. And as Tony Gilroy said, we did everything we could. And I believe him. I believe that he did try because Jimmy Smits has been in everything he can. He has done, voice work for Rebels and stuff. Like he has done what he can when he can to be Bail Organa. So I believe them when they say we tried to get him. I also believe they made the correct call with the recast. It doesn't jar me too much. I think we'll have a similar thing when we come to discuss Ahsoka Season 2 with Rory McIlroy taking over as Baylan Skoll. Again, that casting, Dave Filoni spoke about it at Star Wars Celebration, going through all that. It's a thing of when you have a character so beloved, you have to do a very careful job when recasting, and they did it really well. And the one thing I will say, by the way, when it comes to the whole one BBY and then one ABY, it's the same thing when it comes to years in the Gregorian calendar. There isn't a year 0. There is just like for BCE and CE, for before Common Era and Common Era, it's just you have the last year and then the first year. There is no year 0. So when it comes down to this, it could be set anywhere in that point, but I do love it. And I was in that same boat of, oh no, this isn't just before Rogue One, this is right before Rogue One. This is hence why I said earlier, and I can now bring it in a little bit to what we'll talk about when we get to the, as you said, that little montage at the end. It feels like Andor's now Rogue One is the finale to Andor. This starts to set it up. Yeah, you have those senators, and you start to see that quarreling, but also Mon Mothma in proper Rebels and Rogue One, Mon Mothma guys in terms of the outfit. She's ditched the whole Chandrilan uppity kind of vibe, the whole thing. She's a senator of the people, and now she is dressing like that. She's got the haircut and everything. It is full on proper Mon Mothma. Yeah. And it's brilliant to see because it's just a costume and a haircut. But that costume and a haircut makes the world of difference when it comes to the visual lending of where you are in this reality. It's fantastically well done. But that scene is cracking. And you do have Draven. Draven, for me, is the unsung hero of this end of the timeline when it comes to Andor and it comes to Rogue One, especially when it comes to Rogue One. We will talk about this on Sunday when it comes to talk about this, please don't miss that. It's going to be an amazing discussion. You have this amazing moment where you have Draven pull Andor aside and go, look, ignore what you heard in there. You're going to take out Urso. And you start to see him in this episode click and trust Andor that little bit more. Because you have the whole thing of it's an unregistered mission. They just about get out there without being shot down. When they get back, the first thing is like, right, look, you've done good, but you've given up Yavin. Now the clock is ticking. We've done this all before. We're going to have to do it again. And you know this. You know that through Rebels, they've been to Atalon. They've been to other places. You know that base has moved from place to place to place. You know the Rebels always in the right. And they're just gone, God damn it. We finally found a perfect home. And we're going to have to do it all over again. And we know Dantooine has been in there before as well because of episode 4. You have Leia try to deflect onto Dantooine. Because she's trying to hide Yavin. We know all about this. We know where it's all going to. And it's little nods. I mean, it's... Again, I've given so much credit to Tony Gilroy in this, but between Tony Gilroy, Dave Filoni, Pablo Hidalgo, the story group, they have layered and layered and layered all these threads to have the culmination in episode 4. Episode 4, the original, we know where we're at when it comes to Star Wars, and this starts to be... As you say, it's setting up for Rogue One. We know where it's going to lead to in that first little bit. I also love how, we had Forrest Whitaker return for Saw Gerrera, but it wasn't over the top. It wasn't a whole thing. We know that Saw has been looked at as a bit of an extremist, and you see him pop up here, but it's more of a case of just that scolding of, look, you're doing your thing. You're not doing it well enough. You're doing too much or whatever it is, and you see where it comes to in Rogue One. So again, all starts to tee it up. So yeah, fantastic little scene.
The Saw Gerrera one I love because, his paranoia is so evident in Rogue One. And where we have him in Rebels has a little bit of it. It's Andor season 1. It's his paranoia stems from Luthen. It's the mind games of, do I have spies everywhere? Can you believe me? Can you trust me? Can you not? And we've got to get to that moment in Rogue One where Andor sees Saw, and there is that hesitation of there's history between these two guys. We never needed the context of that. Does he pull the gun? Does he not? And I think that scene is now earned through this moment where Saw's thinking, I think the rebels are sending assassins after me. And in that moment now on Jeddah, when I get to the Roach, I can't wait, it's going to make sense. Like, Saw wasn't going for him, but he was thinking, could it be someone? We now know at least what he's inhaling. It's not oxygen after all. It's rhodonium, which I love. I'm sure you've seen that SNL sketch going around as well that everyone's now resharing. But the War Council moment, I love the part where not they start tearing down Luthen, but to me, Luthen built the Empire. Bloody hell. To me, Luthen built this rebellion. Although Mothma's the face of it, although we have the heroes of it in the original trilogy, Yavin can't exist without what Luthen's done before. This series has made that black and white. And the fact that he is not ready to commit to somewhere like that, the fact Claire doesn't want to go to Yavin, they aren't welcome, essentially, in the area they built up, I find incredible. I really enjoy it as this thing that, Yavin's like the face of the rebellion. Like, we're the good guys, we're the heroes. No, not Saw Gerrera. He's killed a few innocent people. No, not Luthen. He's killed a few innocent people. They'd have never have killed. Oh God, I've forgotten his name from the start of the episodes. Lonnie. Mothma, no, we'd have never killed Lonnie. We'd have took him in. Luthen's like, nah, they've got you. So I've done it. And Luthen is wrong for doing that, by the way. But I love that in this meeting, everyone is sort of talking shit about Luthen because it's horrific hypocritically. And Andor literally is like, none of you have even met the guy. And I love Mothma in this, who does know Luthen, who knows he's the guy that got her out. And I love Cassian reminder of that, if it wasn't for his friends everywhere, Mothma's dead in that episode, in that Senate. We never see her. The rebellion doesn't win. The rebellion isn't built. He's the one that ran Makani. Like, he is the person in Aldani that set that up, that won that. So it's a great scene. And I don't want to get into politics of left wing, right wing, but I've seen a lot of posts about, Andor, although it's anti-fascism, it really tails in on how the left tend to fight themselves. And I'm more left-leaning in terms of my politics as such. It's not everything left, but it's true that, in real-life politics, the right squabble with themselves, the left squabble with themselves. Saw Gerrera is on the left, but he's an aggressive type of that, as is Luthen. But some of these other guys are a different side of left, where they're more peaceful and whatnot. So I love the political infrastructure the series has done. And in this scene, it brings up everything you need to know. That, again, leading into Rogue One, they cannot all be united like, yeah, this is great, we trust it. But as you said about Draven becomes important, that he is a bit tetchy. All they're being told is the name Kyber, Jeddah, Galen Erso. There is no context to Galen Erso. Is he the guy building the weapon? Is he wanting to build the weapon? So when you get to Draven in Rogue One, and I haven't rewatched Rogue One yet, but this is where it is the Rogue One prequel, I understand the order of them saying, you're not letting Erso get out of this, like what he's done. And the hesitation Andor has, I think, is massive. So I like the scene. This scene was needed in this one episode. It couldn't have been any other episode. It had to be a scene leading into Rogue One. I didn't need extended intros of here's every senator who's joined the rebellion. The fact there's a war room, it's in play. This is what we're worried about. Bail Organa has got some great moments, and we'll get to him a little bit later on as well. And the same as you, Benjamin Bratt's done a good job. They did the right thing in how they reintroduced him. He has played an integral role, and he canonically needs to be there as well. They haven't disrespected any actors in doing so. They've done it the best way possible. But moving a little bit more forward, we get this is where we're sort of heading towards the Dark Knight montage ending. After the war room, because that's really the core of the series. Then it becomes Rogue One. So we've got someone on Kafrene. I forget the character's name, played by Daniel Mays, who's had an incredible career since, who we obviously aren't going to see.
Tavik, isn't it?
Tavik, thank you. And he will only speak to Cassian. Cassian's got to go. Draven starts thinking, okay, something's in play here. I've just had this guy come back with this info. This guy there's got this info. And by the way, my last Saw Gerrera comment, if this is Forrest Whitaker's final Saw Gerrera appearance, he has become one of my favorite supporting characters in all of Star Wars, one of the most interesting characters in all of Star Wars. I'm going to be totally honest, and people might like this. I didn't give two shits about the character in Clone Wars. I understood the purpose of him in Clone Wars. It was a cool little nod when they said he's in Rogue One, but he could have been called, Jim Broadbent in Rogue One, and it wouldn't have made any difference to that Clone Wars arc. So, Saw Gerrera, how we've had more of him mapped out, his political side, how he plays his actions, what he's doing on Jeddah. They know their mind for Kyber, and Saw's already there. But Saw being like, nah, I'm not on Jeddah. Like, we know you're on Jeddah. Nah, I'm not on Jeddah. Like, I thought it's playing into that, the psychology of it all. But sorry to sort of jump forward there, but I did want to bring up Saw, and massive shout. Still the fact that Forrest Whitaker's in a Star Wars film, and then the fact he came out for an animated TV series, then the fact he came out for a live action TV series, the fact that he's in video games as well. He is everywhere. Animated series, Rebels. Unbelievable. But Cassian's getting his story set up. And this is kind of where we start to get our farewells to characters. Many original characters who were new to the Andor series, who were not in Rogue One of the original trilogy. Vel is told by Mothma to spy on Andor. Immediately kind of rejects the request, walks up to him and says, listen, is this true? Mon's asking me. And this is one of, I think, the nicer scenes of the series where they sort of toast their fallen. The fact that they were on Aldhani together. The fact Aldhani's now become a myth where some people say they were there when they all knew they weren't there. I loved that. And they basically end up toasting everyone, Val, Syntha, Bix, Gorma, the Aldhani, the people in Aldhani. Like, I loved what they did, those two in that scene. It's a level of respect. And it's a great way to sort of politely bow out Vel as a character. Then get Vel having her breakfast with Mon Mothma. That's the final shot we're going to get him Mothma in the show. You know where I'm heading with this conversation, don't you? Cassian is on his way to Kafrene. should we round out the Rebel discussion there and talk about the finale of the Empire?
I mean, I think so. The only thing I want to add, and in a nice way, is onto Saw. I like how he didn't see his injury. Like, I like how he didn't get the whole context of less is more. Tony Gilroy has done a hyped him up, but for good reason. I don't blow smoke up people's arse when it comes to writing, because writing is such a difficult thing to achieve the storytelling in two mediums, both in the written word and in the visual aspect. Less is more, and in this particular instant, again, we didn't need the context of why he's injured. We can kind of work out, yes, he's on Rhydonium, but we didn't need to know, how he got injured, how he ended up on Jeddah, how he had Bull Gullet. We don't need all that. We just need to know where he is, just to set it up. That's all you need. And it was just a simple little thing. You don't need too much, because as much as I'm a glutton for information and lore dumping, you don't need every little answer to everything when it's not important. These last 3 episodes are there to serve a purpose in terms of setting up Rogue One, but they're also there to serve a purpose of tying up the loose end of the start of the full-on Age of Rebellion, the start of the downfall of the Empire. They're there to kind of put the last bricks in place to create the big picture, as it were. And yeah, it's done a fantastic job on that. So yeah, I also just want to say I love how it was a bit less is more. But yeah, come on, that it's starting to get there. And when they're doing the toast again, Cinta, the big one for me, because her relationship with Val is prevalent in season 1. And you see where it kind of gets to for season 2. You know it's cracked and fractured. You know that when they go for Take-Oma, the implication is there. So we don't know what's happened, but we know it's not good. And yeah, when Val is there, she does tell him, but I think she tells him out of respect of, okay, I wasn't a fan of you joining on Eldani, but over the years, you have earned my respect. You could have left. You said you were done. You didn't. So I'm going to repay that respect by giving you the chance to just tell me. I'm going to tell you up front I've been asked, and now I expect in return from you, give me the straight answer. And just this once, they toast. And just this once, they say goodbye, do what they have to. And then, yeah, because Andor Cassian, knows that if he tells her the truth, and he does, that she will then deliver that truth to Mon. She'll deliver that truth to the Senate, the generals. She'll deliver that truth, and it will get told how it needs to get told. And it is a wonderful interaction.
And how that interaction ends with, I don't say the return, but a fellow Aldani member, Nemik's speech. The montage begins. It comes back. It's such great writing. It's a powerful sequence. It's been used a lot in real life outside of Star Wars recently. To then segue that, they weren't just playing it for the audience at home. Partagaz is listening to that speech alone in the ISB HQ. An unbelievable scene that follows that I don't think I've got the word. I don't want to salute a fascist, but Partagaz has become, I think, a fantastic character within Star Wars. That not just because he's competent,
so well done.
He has a presence, and there is something about him as an operational standpoint that you have a British thespian in there. That he is so direct. And, the quote he said earlier in the season is, curb your enthusiasm. I believe he says that to one of them. And Tony Gilroy's gone on record to say he literally just wrote it because of the series Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is great. Lovely way to get that sitcom involved in Star Wars. But him listening to the speech, I love this moment because it shows that speech got out there. That was released at some point in that 5 years. Rebel Cells have that speech. The Empire has that speech. And just the performance where he's been so secure for every scene he's in, he's commanded those scenes. He's never once looked out of this. Even with Krennic, he's sat there like, this is what we're going to do. There is a sickness. We are out there to get it. And at this moment, it's fucked up and it's fell on him. And just that great moment where he talks about the Death Star and how it should have been done and how it should have been finished. And he knows what's happening. He has lost. And he is not going to go out to the Emperor. He's not going to go out to Vader or to Tarkin. He will go out on his own terms. And just those few moments, it's like, can I just do a few more moments alone? He's got the gun. One of the other ISB guys is on the other side of the door, and it's his sign of respect where he's like, no, you're going to stay there, Stormtroopers. What a character. If someone would have ever said to me like 3 years ago, you're going to get a Star Wars series, you're going to get loads of scenes set in the ISB. Granted, you know a lot more about them than I ever have and will do. For me, who mainly knew them as rebels for being Josh Gad and ridiculous because they kept failing, these are some of my favourite scenes in these 2 seasons. And I was so happy that Partagaz has a closed story arc, but it's such a tragic one, even though it's not tragic because he is a villain. The fact I care for that character. And it is the fact that he did do the right thing in getting that search party after Claire, but it ultimately cost them the Death Star plans. And it is his one singular failure in his role, which cost him his life. Is Dedra Meero's singular failure that cost their hers when we get there. But before we get to Dedra's fate, Partagaz, the floor is yours, Phil.
I mean, you've said pretty much everything I want to, mate. It's Partagaz from the start has been one of my favorite characters because it's so interesting. He plays the actor's name's gone off my head. I know you know it.
Anton Lesser.
Aye, another maester from Game of Thrones has become to become an Imperial officer. I'm waiting for Jim Broadbent to complete the arc here, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know why that name came to my head earlier. It's really weird.
Anyway, it's no, he's done a fantastic job with his character because it shows I want to say kind nature of the ISB. It shows they're so warped by party politics that they are believing they're on the right without them being an extremist, as it were. They are so comfortable in what they're doing, everything just comes naturally, and that's what's terrifying. That's the scary part, when the evil, as it were, comes naturally to you. His ending, and I love it when you have the other one come in and he just talks to him. They both know what's up. They both know what's about to happen in terms of they know, Partagaz is going to go down with the ship, etc. And he says, "Can I have a moment to collect my thoughts?" There's no other words that needs to be said. Collecting my thoughts with a gun it's a line and a half. And it's that sign of respect to his friend. And that's the thing. It's showing an Imperial relationship. One of the things I've always wanted out of Star Wars was to see the Empire from the Empire's point of view. Not the Stormtrooper, not the
deflecting to the other side type thing.
Yeah, I want to see how the other side lives. It's fine enough to throw a different reference in there. It's a thing in Suits where you have the beginning and the ending of Suits, where you have Harvey come in, and he has that basically re-interview with Mike, but he's interviewing for Mike's position. They kind of flip the script from the first episode to the last, and it's a similar thing here of wanting to see how the other side lives. For me, I want to see how the Empire functions with itself, and in this show, they have done more in 2 seasons with Andor than any other books, comics, audios, apart from Lost Stars, to show how the other side lives, to show the human side of the Empire. And Partagaz is the ultimate embodiment of that. He's bringing up Dedra, he's building her up. Take Gorman. Gorman is a gift if you let it be. Look, it seems like a demotion, but it's not. I got you. You got this. That whole thing. He's in charge of the ISB, but sat there going, "Yep, cool. We are doing the right thing." And he also tries to build people up. You got this in season 1, as they're starting to look for Axis. He's playing them against each other, going, "Okay, well, you want to do this? Anyone else? Cool. You want to do this? Is this correct? How do you guys feel?" And then it's like, "Well, come on then, chop chop. I'm asking for answers here. You're on the clock. Tell me, come on." But he's building them up, and you get to the end point where he goes, can I just have a moment to collect my thoughts? And you know what's up. It doesn't surprise me, but I love that little, as you say, it's the stop, don't go in there, but it's a sign of respect. He just bows his head. He knows what his friend's done. He knows it's the end, but he knows he screwed up. He goes, okay, cool. Well, look, don't go and clean up my office just yet. Let him have a moment. Let me pay my respects. And then, clean it up. That's my office now. Everyone get out. Because he knows he's getting the job. But he's not done that before. It's a fantastic... It's one of this little montage, everything that goes on, it is just perfect.
He probably got 2 promotions in 2 days because Yularen goes on the Death Star. You never know.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, and then we have Dedra Meero. Oh my words. When I spotted the Narkina suit on her, I was like, no fucking way.
She's building the Death Star too.
Yep, I texted you guys. I was like, wait. I was like, it just occurred to me that the Death Star is built at this stage. She'll be building the Death Star too. What? It's a fate worse than death. And I wondered. I was like, oh, they're not going to have a jump on the floor, are they? And I love that sequence.
No.
I love the ambiguity. I'm glad they didn't do that. Just her having another panic attack, not being in control, knowing that she's now in Imperial prison. Back to where she was as a kid, essentially. She's under the Imperials. She rose through the ranks. She made one mistake, and that one mistake has cost her life. Let's not put it this way, folks. If the New Republic form and empty those prisons, they will see the name Dedra Meero, and that will be the Butcher of Gorma. She will not be getting a squeaky clean if she survives those 4 years. So it's either a public execution under a New Republic, or it's death during 0 to 4 ABY. Okay. Back to Cassian. Montage end.
I got one bit to add when it comes to Meero here.
Sorry, please do.
Perfect. Again, I love that scene. I love the breakdown, especially when the floor clicks in as well. And you get the moment that breaks her. She sat there going, how did I fall so far? And the thing is, like you say, you almost expect her to jump on the floor. No, I think it's worse than that. Because she wants to earn her place back. She knows she's screwed up. She wants to get out of it. And she thinks she can redeem herself. And she's so sad and so broken in that moment that death is just not the answer for her. It's a beautiful scene. And to show this character that's gone from terrifying and absolutely terrifying with torture and all the rest of it to starting to crack with the, as you say, the Butcher of Gorman, to just cracking at the end from terrifying to terrified. Love it.
It's a great way to end that character arc. Like, to put one of them there, it had to be her. It made the most sense to be her. Cassian, I will talk very quickly because we know where we're gonna end this episode with where the episode ends. Just the running montage. I'm just going to shout another Pow from Rogue One. Gets a little Rocky 3 slow-mo running. Little fist. And this is kind of where the show goes. This will segue into the final shot. I don't react watching TV. I watch Arsenal games at home. I probably reacted to 3 or 4 goals scored in my life at home. I just struggle to emote when I'm sat there watching something on a screen. I can cry, fine. I can be upset, fine. There's no fist bumping. There's no Americanisms. About a football game in person at a stadium, different conversation. But watching Andor, that final montage, when Nemec came on, I was like, oh, that's the first time I've ever thought, wow, if someone had a camera on me, there would have been a half-decent video today. I looked at State, though. Nemec's voice, all these moments of part of the Gaz of Dedra, Pal rocking up, Mel Shiv running. I was like, it's fucking Rogue One. It's Rogue One. Then the cut. Farewell to Cassian. Farewell to everyone. Who is there left that we can have a conversation with? Who deserves an ending? Cut to poor B2, who's been stranded on his planet for far, far too long. Mina Rao. He has been there since 4 BBY. He was joked that he'd been left behind. And then we see a Bix on the horizon. And I was like, oh, we're going to get a Bix ending. And then I spotted her holding. And I could see this little white thing. Not the baby. I could just see a little white, like, oh, she's carrying something. And the camera continues to zoom in. I just burst into tears, Phil. It was ugly crying. Cassian had a child that no one knew about. That's why Bix had to leave the rebellion. The fact that Cassian had a child, no one ever knew, including him. B2 is raising Cassian's son with Bix on Mina Rao, the planet where they escaped to after Ferrix. I was just weeping. I didn't stop crying. There didn't need to be anything said. The music was beautiful. The shots, the sunset, parallel to Rogue One, to A New Hope, to Revenge of the Sith. And I don't mean this in a cheesy way. It felt hopeful. And hope has been a word overused in Star Wars. I will say that. It absolutely has. Not last week with Gorman. That was brilliant. But hope as a concept in Star Wars, I still don't like it being said in the Rogue One. That's just me, being totally honest. But for the first time watch, I was like, hope for the galaxy. We know what happens next. And that's what made it more devastating that Cassian died not knowing he had a son. Bix has the son not knowing Cassian's not going to be returning. And that child... Well, I had a message from Charlie Ashby who put something on Blue Sky, and I think... I don't want to get the words wrong if he's watching, but he basically put... Cassian says to Jin, your father would be proud. He basically made a comment saying that in a few years, Cassian's son is going to be proud of his own father when he finds out. And I just thought the ending wrecked me. Maybe some people are going to dislike that ending. I'd be very surprised if they did, but to end it on that, I don't think would always work. I think that could easily backfire, but it was done in such a way with Bix's heartbreaking message last week of saying goodbye to what she's been through as a character, the ordeals, all of this starts because Bix had a shit boyfriend, by the way, who dobbed Cassian in. That's how the whole thing started. And to end it with his baby, with Bix, safe, away from the Empire. The perfect way to end the series. The best final shot.
Yeah, for me, it's slightly ruined because someone said to me that it was gonna happen. In terms of through not spoiler, but like through what Bix has said basically in her goodbye, basically worked out what was gonna happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they kind of figured out that was going to be the case. They said that's going to be the final shot. So when I saw it, I'm like, they were right, but it's still hit, and but it is the perfect ending because when we'll talk about this on Sunday, and I'll leave most of my comments for then. But that ending beach scene is now just because that's what I could think about was that Cassian's never going to meet his son. And it's a similar age, basically the same age as Jason, who's never going to meet Kanan. It's that same energy of just the heroes of the rebellion do it for a world in which their children can be free. And Cassian never gets to know that. And you have him having just been teed up to go off to the Rings of Kafrene, to go meet Tevik, to start the journey that is Rogue One, to start his final mission. And yet, he doesn't know. He knows that he's who he's fighting for and what he's fighting for without knowing. It is perfect. And yeah, it had me as well. It was more just the slack jaw of just, they went there. No. And that's the reaction. It's more just that it left me a bit speechless. Of they did it. They really put the final nail in the coffin for what a heartbreak Rogue One will become, and sets up. Yeah. They call it A New Hope, and it almost gives new meaning to New Hope for the galaxy that's to come. It is fantastic. So, yeah, that ending montage it sends off all the characters it needs to send off, sets up what needs to set up. And is just, I've said it throughout this this particular show here. I've said it through the first season. The first season of Andor, I felt was the right story in the wrong order in terms of certain bits with Aldani and stuff. Whereas this particular season, there has not been a filler episode. There's not been a beat that's been missed. This has been, do we want to call it peak Star Wars? Because it's up there.
It's in the conversation, and I'm gonna add two more things I forgot to talk about. Other final shots: Krennic on the Death Star and fucking Saw Gerrera staring on his window in Jeddah. Cool as fuck. And knowing that Star Destroyer just arrived adds so much more. But peak Star Wars, it's the conversation. Do you know what I'm going to say to that? I think this isn't me disrespecting the sequel trilogy, the spin-off films, the prequel trilogy. This series, I believe, is going to be regarded as time goes by, even 2-3 years on from season 1, where we are right now, where it will grow. Peak Star Wars is going to be the term I think people use. I think, if I'm totally honest on recency bias, Andor has done something to me where, you know how I've spoke to you that I think the prequel era is a better era than the original trilogy. I guess that's more like not the same. The films are better, but the era in which these take place. Thanks to the likes of Clone Wars, thanks to the likes of other things. The original trilogy didn't need to be improved. The original trilogy is one of the greatest trilogies ever made in cinema. It changed the industry of the world. They got the beautiful addition of Rogue One. One sentence in a crawl from a film almost 50 years ago that gave us a Star Wars prequel film. One of the best final acts, a war film. And I'm sort of teeing up for Sunday saying this. One of the supporting characters of that film then goes and gets his own series. And we have a 24-episode epic in this. A political espionage thriller set within Star Wars, utilizing the budgets that Star Wars has, the availability of talent in terms of performance, in terms of storytelling, in terms of directors. There's no big flash cameos needed to satisfy people. It isn't a series about pleasing the fans. It's because a showrunner had an idea that took it on board and he's made it work. And the conversations people have had about Tony Gilroy in recent weeks and months are earned. And I will add to what Tony Gilroy said yesterday in Vanity Fair. Kathleen Kennedy has to be given credit for the show as much as him. When he said, I want to do a scene set in a brothel, she says, okay, and that gets ran by Disney. When he says he wants to do this, Kathleen Kennedy says, yes, we'll make sure that happens. He has said on the record that she needs to have some credit for the series, the same credit he has. And he actually said, because she gets a lot of shit online, which I think is really interesting that one of the showrunners... I know Star Wars is fine to avoid talking about online politics, fan reactions, etc., etc. And sorry to turn this conversation, but Tony Gilroy has just been a breath of fresh air in Star Wars. He's been so open about his project. He's been so open about his history that he isn't making Star Wars for the sake of making Star Wars, but it works because it's the story he wants to tell. Every interview, you learn something new. He isn't hyping up moments. He's not hyping up his past. He's talking about his experiences and making a show. He's talking about utilizing budgets. They can't get everything they want to. What does he do? He works around it. It has just been so much more interesting to hear from somebody. And this isn't Star Wars now. This is your Marvels. This is your modern day Hollywood. Everything he says is interesting. And he has a point in what he's made. And I think we will sit here in the years to come. And I think there will be conversations that take place. And those conversations will say, is Andor the best ever thing in Star Wars? And I think there'll be people saying yes. I think there'll be people saying no. But what I can tell you right now is when I recommend Star Wars to people, we now have a new entry order. You could recommend Andor, Rogue One, and A New Hope. That's like 30 hours, sure. But, imagine your entry point to Star Wars is Andor. Then you get to go and watch this film. You said Rogue One's a season finale. It is. You think about the origin of Rogue One. Rogue One was a concept for George Lucas's prestige Star Wars live-action series. It was the only one that had a story in play for them to look at adapting into, the first spin-off film, which it was. It is so fitting that Rogue One is the main event to a Star Wars series. It is the season finale. And then what you get after that season finale, you then get the original fucking trilogy. So it's a really exciting time to be a Star Wars fan, even though there's not too much in production. And I'm going to caveat with this before I give you your final remarks. I'm going to say this. The testament of quality to this show is that every single Star Wars series in production is now going to be compared to this. And I agree with a lot of comparisons that will come. They're more industry ones, utilizing budgets, having writers' rooms, different ideas, different storytelling. But I do not need every project under the sun to be compared to Andor from a storytelling perspective of telling the story in this way. Some Star Wars need to have your lightsabers, need to have your Jedi and your Sith. Some don't. Andor has done something the series hasn't done in 48 years. As you said, you've been waiting to hear about them talk about the Empire and see how the Empire worked day to day. It took us that long to get that in a competent way. It's not a series to take for granted. Not every Star Wars series needs to be compared to Andor, but absolutely there are valid concerns. And I think for me, I'll be totally honest, it is going to make it not as exciting for me to look at a show like The Mandalorian. I love The Mandalorian. I can't wait for the film. But I am sat there like, I'm going to be like, a kid who's just had a 3-course meal and has been offered more, but it's a different meal. And I can't be too piggish and have the lot, but I am. And as long as I know what I'm eating is different, I'm okay with that. But it's going to be hard to not think about that quality Michelin-style meal you just had served to you on the plate. So that's my weird final thoughts. Monologue, epilogue, I don't know what to call it. There's an interesting discussion to be had. We'll be having one hell of a discussion on Sunday. But Phil, over to you. Your thoughts on Andor. Is it peak Star Wars? That's what the question was.
It is and it isn't for me in so many ways. Obviously, everyone has what they like out of Star Wars differently. I definitely love my Jedi more. I have my highest peaks are things like the Acolyte, which is big old discussion for people. I've enjoyed watching a show where for the first time in my memory, I've not had to sit around and argue the toss with someone about it. Season 1 was not as good as season 2 by a long shot. It just wasn't. It was good, but it left holes. This fills everything in nicely. The biggest thing for me is they took a character who, when we first knew Andor was going to be a show, and why? They could have picked any character, why this one?
Yeah.
And turned it from a why this one into it could only be this one. It has been a fantastic journey to watch. Peak Star Wars is a objective thing to talk about. Anything that any medium, art, literature, film, whatever it be, everyone's got their opinion, everyone's got what they like and what they dislike. But this particular show has been so unanimously well received that it's going to be up there in peak Star Wars for the moment of just, it was nice to have a show where everybody agreed for once. But no, this show has been incredible. And I agree. I loved, as you say, about Tony Gilroy standing up for Kathleen Kennedy and all the rest of it. I won't be sat here comparing stuff to Andor in terms of the quality. When you talk about a meal, it's a similar thing for me. It's more, you get offered it. I'm at for me, it's a more you can eat buffet. There's a buffet nonetheless. You know that you can go and take whatever you want, but you have just sat down and you've eaten something that is incredible. Now you get to go and experience something different, but that memory is still going to be there. And you might go and get a bit more of that. Nothing more needs to be added to the show. Nothing more needs to happen. No spin-offs need to be made because the spin-off came first, as it were. The season finale, Rogue One, which we'll talk about on Sunday. I have a personal bit of joy in this. So my partner hasn't seen Andor, but critically hasn't seen Rogue One. I now get to sit down with her and watch Andor, season 1, season 2, then Rogue One before episode 4. I get to watch through her eyes that discovery. And you talk about entry point, I get to watch that. For the first time, to see someone sit there who hasn't seen Rogue One, who will experience watching Cassian's journey, not knowing he makes it out and where he ends up in Rogue One. And that's going to be interesting for me on a personal level. But you take that out of the equation, just as you said, it's an incredible entry point. And I put this in our chat. I said, for me, it now feels almost like you have the end arc of Andor Season 2, Rogue One, and A New Hope as its own new mini trilogy. Because it works so perfectly. And in what it now does. So we're going to talk about this on Sunday. And actually, you know what? No, I'm going to leave that final thought for Sunday and give you some food for thought on that, what I'm going to say there. But I'm going to wrap up my thoughts on Rogue One on Sunday. But for now, when it comes to Andor, All I can say is it has been a crazy journey watching it. 3 episodes a week, and I know it was fought for to be able to be put out in this format in terms of it's 4 story arcs, 3 episodes apiece. You put them out at that same week point. If this had been a 2-episode premiere and then an episode weekly, it wouldn't have worked as well. It
Agreed.
had to be like this, and it worked for it so well. Yes, I had to put aside extra time. However, it made the story complete because every single week you were getting a complete journey, getting closer to the end goal, and it works. It's one of the few times when it comes in this modern streaming era where I didn't mind that it was all not dumped at the same time, but they weren't trying to mimic TV in terms of syndication properly of it week by week. They get it story by story, and it was perfect for that.
I'm with you. They've nailed the release. I believe this is going to be a real force at the Emmys. I don't really follow Emmys TV, as in compared to Oscars, we don't run a season doing it on the channel, but I'm going to be very curious watching the Emmys just because Andor Season 1 was nominated for Best Drama at the Emmys. Dig Luna was up for Best Actress Season 1. If they're getting recognition in Season 1, Season 2, I really will genuinely believe myself into thinking that Andor has a high chance of winning Best Series at the Emmys. If Star Wars wins that would be a reminder to say that Star Wars has not had any accolades, respectively, at the top level of award seasons since the original trilogy concluded in 1983 with special Oscars. If Star Wars wins a Best Drama at the Emmy series, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the conversation goes back to that other one. So I'm really excited to talk Rogue One with you. We're going to try and get Sam on. We may have another guest on there too. It's going to be a hell of a discussion. I have not seen Rogue One since the month before Andor Season 1 came out. I've intentionally not watched it for 3 years. I was tempted. It had a cinema release last year. I've been very tempted. I've seen the Blu-rays I wanted to put on. I've held firm. And I cannot wait. And it is a great reward in itself that I'll be able to see it this week. So, Phil, this has been an amazing discussion. As I kind of said, not in a rude way. I'm somewhat relieved it's just us two because we've just gone shy of 2 hours. And that's me and you talking about 3 episodes of TV. We've almost done the runtime of this arc of episodes. And to everybody at home who's been watching, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We mentioned we're back on Sunday. It's going to be our big Andor discussion. If you're a fan of film, obviously we're a film channel. We've just done a spoiler-free review for Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. There will be some more Mission Impossible stuff next week, but we are going to get Andor done today. We're going to get Rogue One done on Sunday. There may be another Andor thing to come, and I will explain that maybe another time. But there's a lot of things to look forward to. We're heading into blockbuster season, and it's been an absolute treat watching the series, having different people come on, discussing it with you, long-time favorites, Dave on the group chat as well. To people that have been commenting with us each week, we really do appreciate that and getting everyone's thoughts on this one. So that is going to be me rounding out for this one. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching us. It feels like a farewell without being a farewell, but these were the last episodes of Andor. And our course has been eternally changed. And on Sunday, we'll be reporting back with how that has affected Rogue One. So that's going to do it from us. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
Good night.